Hello, this is Keith Schmidt with Integrity Data. Today I'm going to be doing part of our summer educational series, Understanding the Different Methods for Managing Employee Leave in GP. A little bit of my background. I've been with Integrity Data for 12 years. I've done some design and coding, mainly implementation as a consultant for 5 of those years. Of course, now I work in the sales department. By 2006, we had 13 products, all of which Microsoft licensed those from us. They are now part of the Advanced Extended Pack, Microsoft Extended Pack for 2013. And prior to that, it was called Advanced Payroll, Advanced HR, PTO Manager, and Benefit Self-Service. We still do a lot of customizations and development work for anybody, as well as we had to get busy and create some more products. So one of the products you'll see today is the Comprehensive Leave Manager that we have since developed. Okay, so why are you attending? Well, some of the companies may be here because their leave policies are changing. They need to get a different way of accruing those vacation leave time, sick time, etc. Maybe you just upgraded to 2013 and now you have HR and payroll modules available. So you're thinking about moving into the HR time and attendance for leave accrual, or just plain the payroll module. Or we decided to bring payroll in-house, and now we got to track leave, not that you didn't track it before, but that you want to track it within the system in GP. Of course, maybe you're still using spreadsheets, which is fine, but maybe you want to automate that and see what's available that you could incorporate into the system. Or maybe there's some new government mandated leaves, as is the case in several cities, from San Francisco, Seattle, Portland, etc., across the country, that you need to figure out how am I going to handle that in an automatic way. So what are we going to do today? Well, we're going to have a high-level overview. We're just going to kind of look at the good stuff, of course, with a little detail, because I'm a detail person. I'm going to discipline myself to keep the high-level hat on today. So we're going to look at the following products. We're going to look at Microsoft Payroll Leave in the payroll module. Then we're going to look at the Microsoft HR time and attendance piece. After that, we'll look at the Microsoft PTO Manager Leave. And then lastly, we're going to look at our Integrity Data Comprehensive Leave Manager. So what are you going to see here today? Well, hopefully, if I don't forget, you're going to see the leave features, for each product. You're going to see a little bit about the important stuff around setting up leave, how to assign the leave to the employees and get the initial employee level setups going. Also, how to inquire about employee leave, how leave is processed, and of course, reporting and looking at inquiry screens, etc. So again, this is going to be pretty high level on that. I'm not going to have any more PowerPoint slides at this point. We're just going to look at live code. Okay, so I'm going to start with the first one. This one is going to be the core payroll leave capabilities. As I walk through these in the order that I showed you a while ago, you will see that each one has a little more capabilities and a little more complexity added at every level there. So the simplest, which doesn't mean that it's not fully featured that you can use it. It just means that it has only a couple options that you can use. So this is the payroll option, and you get to that by simply going to the vacation sick tab in the employee maintenance. Once you get there, and just as a reminder, if you're having trouble seeing the full screen, go to Webinar. It has a full screen icon in the upper left corner that you can maximize for full screen. Back to the vacation sick maintenance. So at the employee level, the setup here, there's a couple parts to the setup. This one here, you need to turn it on, so you can turn on to accrue vacation or to accrue sick time, or both. So basically it's a 2-bucket system. And there's 2 methods with each bucket. So you can have it based upon hours worked, and this would be, if you select that one, this would be hours worked per year. So if they get 3 weeks vacation, that would be 120 hours, and their it's going to put in there the 120 hours as the hours per year that you want to have accrued. Now Microsoft's payroll module automatically calculates this during payroll processing, so it figures out how that works per pay run based upon your frequency, etc. Also, the sick time you can accrue separately, and I just selected on set hours to show you the other option. And for set hours, it's now hours per pay run, and you're going to simply give them 4 hours every pay run, doesn't matter how much they worked, etc. Part of the inquiry that you can do for lookup, you can come to this window and see how many available hours that they have. The other part of the setup is simply that you would have to go into and tell the system, and I'm going to go to it through this pay codes here way. So Adam Barr, he's got some pay codes. So for the ones that are determined by hours worked, you simply have to go into every pay code that you want to use for hours in a pay period that would be vacation or sick time would be paid on if you selected that option. And down here at the bottom you would need to select, for this pay code, I want to use these hour pay code for my vacation and sick accruals. Likewise, if you have pay for holiday, you might want to select both of those also. Then for taking time to reduce the hours, so if I take a sick day or if I take a vacation day, how does that get reduced out of my bucket of hours, my available time? Well, you'd simply have to set up a sick pay type, and the pay type would be sick. And for this particular kind of pay type in GP, you would select the accrue sick time. And what this does is simply says, any code that's a sick pay type, it will reduce the hours in the bucket because I have this checkbox checked down here. And then likewise for vacation, you'd want to check the vacation box. So that's part of the setup. And by the way, this same setup is what you would use for the PTO Manager, which we'll see later. But yes, you'd have to select these boxes just like I mentioned in the core payroll module. Once you set this up and obviously assign it to that at the employee level, it's already assigned when you set it up for the employee. It will go ahead and track this. You can put this on the checks. It will show up on the checks. It shows up in Business Portal. McCorma also shows this data element, green shades, etc. It all shows these data elements in there. If you want to go look at some reports, you can go to, for example, reprint journals, and in here there is a journal that comes out during posting, and that would be the vacation sick time accrual register, which is for this particular leave application. Okay. Likewise, if you want to go to the employee lists, they have different kinds of lists. Here's a vacation time list. So there's various ways you can use Smart List Builder. Also, Smart List in general has core GP payroll times available. Okay, so the next one I'm going to look at, I'm going to move over to my VM session, and we're going to look at the HR time and attendance piece for accruals. So the HR module in and of itself, maybe if you're new to the HR module in GP 10.0 or 2010, you might have that module. Maybe you're just deciding to use this. Maybe you have a policy change, etc. You need to use the HR module. So this is all done in the attendance. There's a brief setup screen that defines some parameters. You need to define the exact dates of your accrual periods. And then we're going to look in more in depth at the accruals. So with the accruals, with HR now, we have more capability. So we have these 4 options of accruing. Now the process for the HR is a little more complicated to that. The process would simply use set up these accruals. Then you have to create an accrual schedule. Then you have to create a time code for using this vacation or sick time or PTO time, whatever it is. And then you would have to assign that to the employee. And that would be the overall process. So I'm going to walk through these, and we're going to start with the most common. The most common accrual out there is based upon the years worked. So if I work from 0 to 5 years, I might get 2 weeks vacation, 5 to 10, 3 weeks, 10 to 15, 4 weeks, and 5 weeks if I work more than 15 years for a company. And I'll use that example throughout this demo today. So we're going to accrue by pay period, and I've got one set up here. This is a vacation. I want you to notice there's 3 vacation schedules here for HR. So this one is by period, and we want to give them 2 weeks vacation for this particular accrual. So 2 weeks is 80 hours. If you divide that 80 hours by the biweekly frequency here of 26 pay periods, you come up with this magic number of 3.08 hours that they're going to actually accrue each pay run on that. So that's how you would set this one up. Then likewise, because the HR module doesn't have a directly tiered method of showing from 0 to 5, 5 to 10, 10 to 15 years, you have to create one schedule for every one of those time periods. And then you combine them. You see that in just a minute. So this is an example of that particular pay period accrual. The next one we're going to look at is an interval. An interval is like if twice a year, semi-annually, maybe quarterly, you give them, or annually, you give them a certain amount of hours. So you set up the interval. You have to tell it how many days in the interval. This is 91 days, which would be a quarterly. And we're going to totally give them 100 hours. So quarterly, that would be 24 hours every 91 days, comes up with their 100 hours. It does have an anytime max with the HR piece, time and attendance piece. The anytime max basically says you'll never be able to get over 150 hours in your bucket at any point in time. The next one I'm going to show you is the post once. We've got a couple kids who work at State Farm Corporate in Bloomington, Illinois here, and they get all their vacation sick time on June 1st, I believe. And so this is an example of that. We call this a lump sum posting, and similar to the 91-day frequency is another type of lump sum. So we're going to give them 100 hours, and we're going to do that all at once, one-time posting per year. Again, there's an anytime maximum. Then the last one, which is a little more complicated, it's hours per year. So the hours per year, you want to give them 100 hours in a year. You've got the anytime maximum. They work 80 hours. So if you have like part-time people that only work half-time, it would be 1040, etc. You put those hours in there. Now you got to tell it which pay codes apply toward this particular accrual. And then during the pay period, it'll figure it all out based upon this information. So if you only work 72 hours, you'll get that correct proportion of time based upon these codes that you have in the system. So the next step is, now you've set up all your accruals, you're going to go to an accrual schedule. In the accrual schedule, you're going to basically come up with your sick policy, your vacation policy in this sense. So here is the vacation policy, and the additional piece of information here is seniority date. A seniority date, you could think of that as either a seniority date as in the HR module, or it can be thought of as the adjusted hire date or the hire date on the payroll information screen. So now we got these 3 accruals that we're going to assign to this particular schedule, and basically this is for the 2 weeks vacation. And that's for the first 3 months, 4 weeks vacation, etc. And so you stage your year's work basically over here in the terms of months on that. So you set up your schedules next, and then you set up a time code. So you have to create a time code for each one of these, and select the type when you set that up. And here's going to be the default schedule for that time code. This enables you, when you enter information into your transactions for pay run, this will make the HR piece work just fine on that. So this is all part of the setup that you set these up. And then the next thing you're going to do is assign this to the employee. So we're going to go over here to the cards piece. This is on 2013. And we're going to go down to the employee maintenance under HR, employee attendance, and maintenance. And I'm going to use Adam Bar today. So we're going to select Bar. And we're going to pull up that time code that he has. This is the SIC2. So there's the time code that would be entered in the HR module for time and attendance, etc. Then the accrual schedule we assign here. You can assign the corresponding accrual schedule. This kind of brings everything together on the HR side for the employee. You're going to put it on the seniority date, so the schedules will change their frequencies of 0 to 5, 5 to 10 years, etc. And then, of course, you got to let them know when the next accrual date is. Now, the system will automatically change the accrual date as you run the accrue process. You can also warn all 4 of these leave policies or leave modules that we're going to look at today. You can warn when available time falls below 0 when you're entering transactions. Likewise, you can print the available time on payroll checks if you select that option. You do have some information about hours to date, etc., hours available, basically on this particular window to look up some of that information. So to go ahead, what you have to do every time you run payroll, you're going to come into the transaction side of human resources, and you're going to accrue. So basically, you're going to put down this accrue attendance through, and this is typically your last day of your pay period. Of course, it tracks that on another window that you have accrued. So in case you forget, have I accrued or not, you can go to that other window and say, yeah, I've accrued that already. So you hit accrue, and then Microsoft HR module does its magic and comes up with all the taken time out of your bucket and the accrued time in your bucket, sets the maximums, etc. So for looking at this information, back to reports, you can go into human resources and go into the attendance side for reports. And there's all kinds of core reports around the accrual. All these are available. You can set up the parameters and create the report that you want to get around the accrual for HR module. Okay. So this would include everything for the HR module. Just checking my notes here a second. So the next one we're going to talk about is PTO Manager, and we're going to start with the setup side of PTO Manager. Then for PTO Manager, it does have a little bit more capability than the HR side. Each one of these kind of build in complexity. So in the PTO options screen, you have to tell it, what your accruals are going to be based upon what the adjusted hire date or the hire date. There's a little year-end there's a year-end processing that you need to do with PTO Manager. There's a vacation calendar available for this particular piece also. All right, so we're going to close that window. Again, we have to start by setting up some schedules. This is a little bit different here than the other one in the sense that it can handle multiple years of schedules. So we have this range is down here. This from and to range is we have 4 policies here. The typical range would be years worked. For here, okay. So the typical range would be years worked. So from 0 to 5 years, you're going to get the 3.08 hours. Again, that's 2 weeks of vacation divided by 26 pay periods. One thing this does is goes a little bit further for prorating if your policy is to prorate. And what I mean by that is typically a person would work biweekly 80 hours. But if a person only works, say, 60 hours or 50 hours, you don't want to give them the full 3.08. If that's the policy that your company has, you simply put in a calculation factor, and then those check boxes on those pay codes, they'll sum up all the hours. If you only come up to 60, it'll take 60 times this calculation factor. So where's that calculation factor come from? Well, it simply takes the 3.08 maximum for an 80-hour work week. So if you divide 80 into that, you'll come up with that calculation factor. So this one goes a step further in the sense that it handles the prorating of vacation or leave time or sick time, whatever you have call that in your system. You can also do this based on hours worked in a pay period. So for example, maybe they get so much vacation if they work 40 hours in an 80-hour pay period, or maybe they get more if they get 60 hours in a pay period. Maybe they don't get any if they fall under 40 hours. You could set that up again, and that can also be prorated. You can also do hours worked per year. So if you have to reach a threshold of 1,500 hours in a year before you start accruing time, you could set that up. And then hours worked life to date, I know that's in there. I personally don't have anybody that I know of that's using that, but that doesn't mean someone doesn't use that particular capability. So now you're going to set up your different schedules. You may have a different schedule for part-time employees. You may have a different schedule for management. Maybe you have multiple levels of leave policy that you have in your company. So you can set up these different schedules to handle that situation. Okay, I made a change. I'm going to save that. So this would be pretty much all of the setup. We'll look at the maximums in a minute. So after you get these all set up, what you're going to do now is actually set the PTO policy up. So this would be an example of a full-time employee policy versus maybe a half-time employee policy. So we're going to set up a code here for vacation. And now what we can do is assign that vacation schedule, which is the accrual schedule. So if I pull that up, here's that accrual schedule that we just set up. And we can assign that to this vacation policy. So for this PTO leave code, we can assign a vacation and a sick. So PTO Manager handles two buckets, but they also include a form of waiting period, which is an additional level compared to the HR module. So the waiting period is always a recurring one. So if we have a recurring waiting period, by default, it's going to expire at the end of every year. That's why you see the 1/1 of 2018. So this is an annual recurring as of January 1st every year. If you want it to be based upon an annual recurring on the anniversary date, when you select this, that anniversary date will be either that adjusted hire date or that hire date. And every year on that date, the waiting period will end. And what a waiting period does is it accrues the time during payroll processing every time, but it puts it in a pending bucket. So the employees do not see that as available time. What they see is basically zero, or if they have a carryover from the year before, they would see that amount until they reach that anniversary date or that calendar year date. Also, there's an anytime maximum, just like in the HR module, except this time we can now assign a schedule to that. This makes it a little simpler than what you have to do that in the HR module. So I can set up a schedule basically for anytime maximum. So from 0 to 10 years, I can only have a maximum of 240 hours at any point in time. And from 10 to infinite number of years, I can have up to 360. So you can add a schedule to this. The other thing that we can do that is more difficult in HR, very difficult, is a carryover maximum. So PTO Manager has the ability, PTO Manager is part of the Microsoft Extended Pack, and then it has the capability to do a carryover. So a carryover is a little bit different than an anytime maximum. This is at some frequency a carryover process is run, and you can tell it what to do. So you can run, if you have a policy now of a use it or lose it, you would just select the top box. That's carryover on an anniversary date. So when their anniversary dates, it's going to set it back to 0. If you want to allow some carryover, you could put in here 200 hours of carryover or whatever that would be. And this is going on their anniversary date. It's going to allow carryover of 200 hours. This very same thing applies for sick policies. and you can assign 2 policies under one leave code. So you can have multiple leave codes. You would only assign 1 leave code to an employee at a time, but you can set up, the other aspect here is a concept of multiple schedules. So how does multiple schedules work? So the only example I know that kind of makes sense about the multiple schedules at this point is you can set up, for example, your company has a policy, gosh, you work for us for 15 years, we're just going to give you an extra 4 days of vacation on your 15th year anniversary. So schedule number 1 says basically I'm going to earn 3.08 hours every pay period, but gosh, when I get my 15th anniversary, I want to drop in the extra 32 hours or 4 days. So you can assign both schedules now, not have to worry about it. It would automatically plop that in one time, on that schedule. It's just going to be a one-time dropping in of that. Then the rest of these policies would apply. So how does that work? Well, what it does, it calculates the 3.08 for Schedule 1, and then on that year when the anniversary comes, it calculates the second schedule, which says, 32 hours or 4 days, and then it adds them together. So that particular pay run, when that date comes across there, it would simply add the 32 hours onto the 3.08, and they would get 35.08 hours in that one pay run. So that's an example of a dual stage vacation, and that can also be set up in sick if you have the need for that type of policy. Okay, so now we've got this set up. We're going to discard any changes I make. And now we're going to go to the employee level for PTO Manager. And we're going to pull up Atom Bar. Now when this is blank and you assign this vacation PTO code that we just set up, it will ask you if you want to default the information in, as it does on most payroll type employee assignments, whether that be benefits or deductions or retirement, etc. So it's going to default in all the information the way you have it set up. Of course, now at the employee level, anything that is in the white part, you can change that information by employee. So it defaults this information in. It gives you some additional information here. Here's your vacation available. Here's your sick available. And here is the next anniversary date for the anniversary. For example, like the waiting period recurring on the anniversary, etc. And then also there's some data down here, life to date and year to date accrued hours. You can also get a couple reports, and you can also do adjustments. So it was challenging to do adjustments with payroll. The audit trail gets a little clearer as you use PTO Manager, as well as it's challenging to do adjustments in the HR module. Not that you can't do it, just a little more challenging. So you can do an adjustment here. So on this PTO Manager piece, you can do an adjustment for vacation or the sick bucket. You put in the amount that you want to adjust that, the effective date, put a comment in here because it'll show up on the detail report with that comment. And then what do you want to update? Do you want to update the employee balances only? Do you want to update PTO transactions detail only, or do you want to do both? So you would select what would apply, and then you would say OK on that. So I'm going to cancel. Then here we have a detail report, a detail screen, not a report. You can get the report by selecting the detail report up here. And you can also drill back, cancel that. You can also drill back to other screens right from here with the Go To button. So there's a little more user friendliness here. So I don't have a lot of data here run for this particular leave code for PTO Manager. But it's going to show your transaction type. It will show your taken, your earned, etc., the dates, the check numbers, and the like. So this is a form of an audit trail, and you have some ability to select by types, transaction type, check number, change date. You can do a date range in here also, and you can also select the year. So there's more audit trail capabilities. You can see a lot more detail with this particular inquiry window that comes in PTO Manager. Again, PTO Manager will automatically run as you have this assigned to employees. Keep in mind that it picks up the hours and the taken times based upon how we set that pay codes up. I showed you that earlier. We will not look at that again. We also have in the reports section a PTO report. So there is a liabilities report. So if you're biweekly and you have 4 or 5 days left in the month, and the accounting wants to know what the accrued liability is for these 2 codes, or all the codes for that employee, they can run this liability report and they'll pull that information up. There's also an exception report that you can run, which shows that different exceptions that could come up, and give some detail around that. So you do have some reporting areas, and again, we're trying to stick to a high-level presentation of these different factors. All right, so that would be the third one, the PTO Manager, and then we're going to start looking at the Comprehensive Leave Manager. The Comprehensive Leave Manager is an integrity data product. Of course, PTO Manager used to be an integrity data product until Microsoft licensed it. Okay, so again, we're going to start with setup, and I think you'll see the tie-in to the word comprehensive in here compared to these others as we walk through some of these setups. All right. Again, we're going to have the accrual schedule. This should look real familiar to the schedule we had last time. We do have some other options in here. So in addition to the 4 that we had last time, we also have hours worked in a calendar year and hours worked in an accrual year. So if you track those hours based upon their hire date or adjusted hire date or a calendar year, you have now those ranges that you can set up in addition to the others that were in PTO Manager. Again, same type of scenario where you can have a prorated for a calculation factor, and then for the maximum hours here, you can also use the maximum hours. The last time it was based upon per pay period variable for PTO Manager, and per pay period fixed. We had per year variable and per year fixed, and then with Comprehensive Leave Manager, we've added the variable and fixed for the calendar year as well. And most of these different options that we've come up with have been requests from either partners or from customers that we get several requests, so we keep adding features to the Comprehensive Leave Manager to handle more and more capabilities out there in the system. One that I want to look at here is Comprehensive Leave Manager. We can also handle the Seattle, San Francisco, Oregon leave time. They have for part-time employees where they accrue every 30 hours an hour of leave time. So we can handle that out of the box with Comprehensive Leave Manager, just FYI. Okay. So once you set those accruals up, again, you can have anytime maximum schedules, just like in PTO Manager. So we're going to now go into the leave setup. Comprehensive Leave Manager has 3 types of leave setup. One type is the accruals, which we've been focusing on primarily here. Another type is a lump sum. We talked a little bit about that in HR module, a lump sum. And that has a lot more capability, and we'll take a look at that quickly. And then the last one is comp time for public sector. So I'm going to start just real quickly looking at the comp time piece here, and I've got a code here called comp time. So for public sector, what comp time does is you create a comp taken or comp earned pay code. And so if I've worked 48 hours and I've got 8 hours of overtime, I can choose to comp that time, in other words, at time and a half. So typically I could get paid for 8 hours of overtime at time and a half, but instead I'm going to take that 8 hours and put it in a bucket at a factor of 1.5. So Comprehensive Leave Manager will automatically put the 12 hours, that's 8 plus 4 for the 1.5. So now in the bucket, after they run payroll, they would see that they have 12 hours that they could use. And then, of course, if you want to take some of that comp time, that you set up a pay code. Of course, that pay code usually is at regular time because you're taking 12 hours. So you set up a pay code to take that time in the bucket. So Comprehensive Leave Manager has another additional capability where right here you can just select the pay codes that you use for calculations in the accrual schedule, or for example, selecting comp time. I'll get into these other options here on the other screens. One thing that has several companies have done is, they track hours for some reason without pay. Maybe they create a pay code with $0 that says, time taken off that's not planned, so an unplanned sick time. Well, they want to track how many hours of unplanned sick time an employee has. Well, you would simply use a comp code, create an earn code called unplanned sick time, and then of course they're not going to take it, but it would then put all those hours in this bucket and keep accumulating them, and then you can manage those hours if you need to. So that's another way to handle just tracking hours for some other purpose other than leave. Okay, so let's clear this and let's go now to the PTO, which would be like a vacation sick combined. And you can have a vacation leave code, you could have a sick leave code, you could have PTO, you could have multiple leave codes. On this type we're going to talk about is accrual. Again, we have those accrual schedules that we had before that you can select your pre-set up accrual schedules. Now you can determine what is that based upon. So from 0 to 5 years, what is 5 years? 5 years from the hire date, 5 years from the adjusted hire date? Is it 5 years from some other date? For maybe you rehire an employee and they come back and you don't use the adjusted hire date. Well, you could use another date here, or you can use the HR seniority date. PTO Manager does not have to have the HR module to function. The effective date would be the effective date of this policy. And then now we have automated the capability to calculate the earn time during payroll processing. Or if you want to, you can, if you need to do that, for example, exactly on the last day of a month for a sick policy or something like that, there is a transaction window that you can actually manually calculate leave time and post it right then and there. We have multiple waiting period types. So it's not just the recurring ones like in PTO Manager, but now we can have a one-time waiting period or none. So if you have a typically one-time waiting period, that would be based upon so many hours. You have to work 1,040 hours. Maybe it's 90 days waiting period. You'd put that in here. If it's hours, you'd put the hours in here. Likewise, you could have a date. Maybe it's a one-time waiting period and it's based upon the adjusted hire date or the hire date, etc. We have an anytime maximum. The only difference here is you can have no maximum, you can have a fixed amount, very similar to what HR and PTO Manager has. And again, you can use a schedule. So if you set up a schedule, years worked, your anytime maximum can be greater, and it automatically handles that anytime maximum with this code. Carryover, we've added quite a bit of functionality to the carryover. Obviously, no carryover allowed is a use it or lose it policy. Carryover on a calendar year end, which is typical, so January 1st or December 31st, if you select that, you'd put in the last day of the year. The system will automatically increment this carryover date as the time goes on in the process payroll. So you don't have to come back in and worry about changing that date again. You can also do carryover on the anniversary date. So, and this anniversary date would be contingent upon what you have selected over here on this particular accrual based on. So this is what the anniversary date would be. Then likewise, you can have carryover at some other date, like a State Farm. They would have May 31st as their carryover date since they issue that lump sum vacation sick time on June 1st. And then, of course, you can have no carryover limit like the state of Illinois has. So for their employees, they can just keep accumulating and accumulating and get all that money paid out when they retire or leave the state of Illinois. Next, we have a carryover maximum schedule. So in addition to a anytime maximum, now we have a schedule for carryover. So it goes a step further than PTO Manager in the sense that you can say from 0 to 5 years now you can carry over different amounts based upon how long you've been working with the company. We have the capability also to set a fixed amount. If you don't use a schedule, it's going to be a carryover would be a fixed amount that you can put in here based upon these information and what you've selected up here. We've also added the ability to handle the transfer of those chopped off hours. So if you have 240 hours and you're only allowed 200, so on the carryover date you lose 40 hours. Well, by the way, we do have a report of all this lost time from any time maximums or carryover being chopped off. But we also give you the opportunity to transfer that to another code. Typically this would be used in a sick bank scenario. So those vacation hours or PTO hours that get chopped off, they can be put into a sick bank that maybe other employees can use. And Comprehensive Leave Manager handles the ability to transfer those hours in and out of a sick bank. Again, this can be done all automatically during payroll processing, or if it's critical that you do it on a certain date, you can use the manual processing. And there's a transaction on the utilities. There's a manual carryover processing utility out there that you can use for that. Again, for the schedules, you would select your earned codes. These are, for example, what pay codes for hours on the transaction during the pay period. You add all those hours up, and again, if it comes to like 60 hours versus 80, if you're prorating, well, these pay codes are the ones that comes up to that 60 hours. So if you pay, if you pay PTO while you're on PTO, which is pretty common, or sick days, etc., you can do that. Taken pay codes, you can have multiple taken pay codes with Comprehensive Leave Manager. If the need arises that you need to take time out of 2 buckets, in some scenarios we've done that, you can put that pay code on both buckets to take that time out. Likewise, if you're using FMLA, and I'll touch on this in a minute, but Comprehensive Leave Manager integrates with the HR modules FMLA piece. What we simply do is create a transaction. So if I go out for carpal tunnel surgery, I might be out for a week, I can just put that on my time card that I'm taking that FMLA. Typically you would have paid and unpaid pay codes to handle the various scenarios, including the military paid and unpaid. We'll take a look at that in a minute. All right, so these are the features that are at the setup level. And the last one I want to look at, I'm going to clear this, and we're going to look at the lump sum. This is a community service one, Integrity Data offers. So based upon some frequency, we get 2 days of community service on that. So this would be a lump sum. There is a lump sum accrual schedule, but that schedule for a lump sum is only based upon years worked. So you can get a larger lump sum based upon a schedule of years worked. Okay. Then next, you'll have the ability to put a frequency on the lump sum. So for example, like the State Farm, when they would put 6/1, they're going to get their 300 hours or 400 hours, whatever that would be. But you can also do this monthly, quarterly, annually. It can be on a schedule of their adjusted hire date, etc. It can be a recurring one, etc. We can also, during the year-end process, we have the capability of renewing this data every year. So you don't have to come in and re-enter this information for the frequencies, etc. If you have, for example, like a birthday policy, and on your birthday you want to give a lump sum, when you assign this to an employee, you can just simply use by dates, put their birthday in here, give them a half-day offer, etc. Again, for lump sum, because it's given to them, there's no earned codes because it's just a set of hours dropped in the bucket. There is a pay code that is for taking your time off that you would designate here. All right, so this is the setup. Now let's go to the assignment for the employee for Comprehensive Leave Manager. So we have a couple ways to assign it. So if you have several policies, what we can do is the quick assignment. So we can pull up a employee, and you can just come in here and check off, out of all the ones that your leave policies that you have, you can just check them off. You can put in an effective date and accrued through date, and you're done, as long as there's nothing that needs to be changed. The other way you can do that is by going into the leave. And so if we pull up Adam Barr at the employee level, you can assign the code to here. So I'm going to look at the PTO code, and all the things default in just like you had from before. In addition, you have this information over here about your balance, years of service, calendar and accrual, years worked, hours worked, life to date hours worked. In addition, we have on the Go To button a leave summary. The leave summary shows all the codes. This can be sorted by, view it by all of them or just the ones that have balances. You can also filter this by calendar year or fiscal year or all. Select the year. You can have transaction dates in here if you have a particular period you want to look at. When you select these, it refreshes all the data in the earned, taken, adjusted, remaining, and pending is for the waiting periods. And it's by user, so if I want to see it one way and some other user wants to see it another way, it remembers and keeps the settings. So for the next time that user opens up, it'll open up to the same settings. If I double click on the PTO Manager, I can go to the detail. Again, the detail has the same types of settings here that you can have. Shows the information up here again. And now in the details section, it shows all the transactions from the beginning of time or based upon your filter. So an example would be a beginning balance go live, which could be imported, or you can manually enter that in. Start with 200 hours, and then they're going to accrue some time. Somehow they reach their maximum balance. Now you notice when I select maximum balance, it talks down here, there's a little note that kind of explains that. Sometimes there's, for the carryover, there's some hours in here. So you see a lot of detail around these. Here's some taken time. Here is some time put back in for a mistake. Our negative payroll transactions module actually put this in here, as it will do with all the other PTO options that we talked about today. And then we have these specific transactions you can do. So let's take a quick look at the transactions. And we got create a transaction. So in here we've got the ability to create different kinds of transactions and post that right now. So we can do an adjustment in case there's a mistake making or some manager decides, hey, I'm going to give Billy Bob an extra day of vacation because he's been such a great worker. You can come in here and add those hours in here. So you can adjust the amount, or you can adjust even the pending column if there's a mistake made. One thing about Comprehensive Leave Manager, there's nothing that you can't fix in case you got something wrong or something changes. You can also do a payout. This is a real popular, likable feature. So Adam Barr is terminated, and we now need to pay out his 95.24 hours. We can select a payout and put the date and the amount. Put in an adjustment here. For example, I think I have one up here, termination payout. So whatever I put in the comment field will show up in the audit trail description on the transactions detail screen. Likewise, I can, in addition to doing a payout, now I got to remember, oh gosh, I got to go out there and create a pay code and pay it out for this 95 hours. Got to create a factor because we only pay out 75%, blah, blah, blah. But we can do that right here. So we can just create a batch on the fly or add it to an existing batch, tell it what the pay code is. When you hit post, it'll create that transaction automatically out there in the payroll transaction entry window for that particular batch. The other thing we can do is a transfer. So you can transfer hours from an employee's, for example, PTO bucket to their community service bucket, or however you want to do that. Or you can transfer hours to another employee to one of their leave codes that they have. If they have cancer or some kind of sickness, and employees can contribute that if that's your policy. So it's real easy to do that. The audit trail shows up the to and from on the transfer. Likewise, sometimes you get a call and the employee says, well, I took off 3 weeks ago on Thursday. Well, you can come in here on the taken codes. You can it will show the transaction taken to and taken from. So as long as you enter their taken transactions in the transaction entry window with specific taken to and taken from on the transaction, we will record each one of those individually here, and you can always come in here and see what is available and what's left and what actual days they took on this. Okay, so you can see there's a lot of ways to get the information. There's a lot of ways to set that up with Comprehensive Leave Manager. There's reports on setups, reports on the windows that you can get for these different transactions, etc. This does integrate, Comprehensive Leave Manager does integrate with Green Shades. So in the Green Shades Employee Portal, the Comprehensive Leave Manager codes show up, as well as the earned, taken, and remaining balance in Green Shades paychecks. Also, you can put this same information on the earning statements in GP, as well as the pay stubs in GP, and on the reprint, if you go to the inquiry window for check history, for example, and you pull up Adam Barr's checks, and you go down to one of them that was actually created by our system. You can recreate the pay stub. Oh, I got to select it first. Okay. Recreate the pay stub. And it's going to go out there and recreate this direct deposit pay stub in its own fashion. Okay. And if you scroll down here a page or two, you'll see here is the comprehensive leave time information on that recreated. So this shows up also on Business Portal if you're still using Business Portal, and it will show up on the new Business Portal when as they bring more information online in GP. So we have that capability to see all this data wherever they need to see it. If you have a sick bank, you can actually hide that specific codes from being printed on the checks or the pay stubs or on the portals. We have a way to do that. We have some reports for Comprehensive Leave Manager. And there we go. So if that lost time report is the key one. The other reports are on the screens, the setup screens, the employee assignment screens, etc. We also have the liability report, which is an Excel report that comes with Comprehensive Leave Manager. And if you request, we have some Smart List Builder reports that work as an edit report in the system. The last thing we want to look at is on the FMLA piece. So when you're doing the FMLA part for Comprehensive Leave Manager, you simply turn it on. You assign the pay codes for regular and the military pay codes, and this is for creating those instances. So when you go to the employee level, of course this defaults off all the settings that you set up in the HR module for FMLA. So if we go to the employee benefits level, we do have an employee level calendar. I don't know if I got this set up for Adam Barr or not, but I can create an employee level calendar. So if Adam works like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday versus Monday through Friday, it will know if he takes an extended FMLA how many hours that that would include for his FMLA time. Likewise, when you look at the standard core FMLA stuff, if we look for Adam Barr, tab off of that, you can see he's got 3 instances created, and here's what we do. We automatically say it's created from payroll transaction. Here's your check number. Here's the audit trail. You know, that was 2 hours of FMLA, 6 hours of work on that particular day. It was a partial. We mark these accordingly, and again, it would reduce the information from here. So it does this all automatically. You do not have to be receiving a paycheck to get that. If someone enters time on behalf for the full 80 hours, it will go ahead and create this instance out here, even though the employee doesn't have any other transactions. So we handle that automatically. There's an FMLA report that comes out also during posting on that. Okay, so I'm going to go back to PowerPoint slides here. So I want to appreciate everybody taking the time to go through that. There's a lot of information, I know, to digest. If you have some specific questions, you can contact your partner. For this information, you can contact me or Integrity Data, and we can help you through these different pieces. But your primary contact would be your partner, so they can help you with all these pieces, including Integrity Data. I appreciate the time, and thank you so much for taking your time to look at these various leave policies. Hopefully you figured out, gosh, this one fits us best. Or maybe I can now do these other new policies and come up with a way to handle those policies. So this will be the conclusion of the webinar, and I'm going to go ahead and end this. If you've got any questions, again, you can email me or contact your partner. Thank you very much, and have a good day.